Good morning. It's Thursday, the 27th of February. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast coming to you from ARIRANG's news centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. As part of President Park's economic innovation plan, the government will increase the number of rental homes and offer more low-interest mortgages to stimulate the housing market, thereby boosting domestic demand. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has branded North Korea an evil place, saying the world should be extremely concerned about the human rights abuses happening inside the country. Plus, in a move likely to further inflame tensions in Northeast Asia, dozens of Chinese victims of Japan's wartime forced labor and their families file suits at a Chinese court against Japanese companies for damages. We begin with President Park's drive to boost domestic demand by relieving the burden of housing costs on the nation's middle class. Authorities hope measures put forth on Wednesday will boost the sluggish housing market. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
Balancing record-breaking exports with greater domestic activities is a key economic objective of President Park Geun-hye's three-year plan. And as the first concrete step toward boosting domestic demand, the government has put together a detailed plan to reinvigorate the housing market. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok told a meeting of economy-related ministers on Wednesday that there is an urgent need to stabilize skyrocketing housing rent fees to allow consumers to spend more on other things. To control prices in Korea's traditional rental system called jeonse, the government will make sure some 500,000 new homes will be built over the next 3 years. The government will also offer low-interest loans totaling 11 trillion won, or $10 billion to new home buyers to ease their burden. It will also draw up tailored plans for people seeking to rent their home on a monthly basis. Wednesday's move came one day after President Park unveiled a three-year plan aimed at overhauling the Korean economy into a vibrant trendsetter from a fast follower.
내수 기반을 확대하기 위해서는 국민들의 소비를 짓누르고 있는 가계 부채와 전세값 상승 문제를 최우선적으로 해결해야 합니다. 우선 가계 부채부터 확실하게 관리해 나갈 것입니다.
And to rein in the household debt issue, Seoul aims to lower households' disposable income to debt ratio by 5 percentage points by 2017. The Finance Ministry also said it would raise household income by creating new jobs, particularly for women and young people. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
While the president has vowed to boost sluggish domestic demand in her economic plan, consumer confidence edged down this month amid lingering uncertainties despite an overall improvement in economic activity. Connie Kim reports.
Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index, a gauge of consumers' overall economic outlook, living conditions, and future spending, dipped for the first time in 5 months in February. The Bank of Korea says the index came in at 108 this month, down 1 point from January when it hit an almost 3-year high. It isn't all doom and gloom, however, as the reading, which is above 100, still means that the optimists outnumber the pessimists. That said, consumers feeling less confident about the economy could raise red flags about future growth at a time when President Park is pushing to create more balance between domestic demand and exports. She stated this on Tuesday as one of the goals of her 3-year economic innovation plan.
기초가 튼튼한 경제, 역동적인 혁신 경제, 내수 수출 균형 경제 등 3대 핵심 전략을 제가 임기 내내 직접 챙기면서 강력하게 추진해서 성공적으로 이끌어 갈 것입니다.
The Bank of Korea says the lukewarm consumer sentiment is largely due to consumers not being able to feel the economic recovery in their everyday lives. The sub-index measuring medical expenses and housing expenses dropped 2 points and 1 point respectively in February.
The income growth rate has slowed down because of the increase in household debt and the fact that our population is aging. People aren't spending as much.
In order to achieve the president's targeted economic growth of 4% by 2017, all eyes are fixed on whether the government has the right measures in place to boost flagging domestic demand. Connie Kim, ARIRANG NEWS.
And while we're speaking of striking a balance between exports and domestic demand, our parliamentary correspondent Ji Myung-gil has more on detailed measures the Trade Minister laid out before lawmakers on Wednesday.
In an annual policy report to the Parliamentary Trade Committee on Wednesday, Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik promised to support small and medium-sized companies seeking to boost their export volume.
To help SMEs boost exports, we will increase the size of our trade finance program to more than $72 billion this year from $69 billion last year.
Yoon said the ministry will aim to lift Korea's total export volume to over $600 billion this year, up from a record high of nearly $560 billion in 2013. The ministry will also seek to increase domestic demand in order to reduce the country's reliance on exports, making the Korean economy less susceptible to the ups and downs of global markets. The government also plans to reform the country's regulatory system over the next 3 years to remove excess red tape and bolster sluggish corporate investment.
The ministry will review the current economic regulations from the ground up with the idea of removing the excess. We will also try to prevent the regulatory system from becoming overly complex.
To promote trade relations, the government will seek to conclude pending bilateral free trade agreements with China, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand as soon as possible. Lawmakers on the Trade Committee urged the government to be thorough in its assessment of what Korea has to gain and lose from the trade pacts. Implementation of the trade deals is expected to expand Korea's trade territory from 55% of the global market to 71%. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Korea has posted its 24th consecutive monthly current account surplus, but the amount tightened to its smallest amount in almost a year in January. The Bank of Korea says the country's current account surplus stood at slightly over $3.6 billion in January, down some 40% from a month earlier due to a fall in exports and increased spending on overseas travel. The central bank said exports dropped in January because most of the country took time off over the Lunar New Year holiday. Korea's yearly surplus for 2013 clocked in at a record $70.7 billion, but the central bank expects it to fall to $55 billion this year as the government looks to strike a better balance between domestic demand and exports. US Secretary of State John Kerry has urged the world to pay close attention to the dire human rights situation in North Korea, calling the isolated nation a, quote, evil place. Oh Jin-ju has the details.
In his strongest condemnation of North Korea yet, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has branded the country an evil place and slammed the regime for its grave human rights abuses and nuclear weapons program. In an interview with American network MSNBC on Wednesday, Kerry said there was no doubt North Korea is one of the most closed and cruel places on earth, and there is evil taking place there that all of us should be deeply concerned about. He emphasized the need for enormous focus by the world in order to hold the regime accountable, and that every aspect of any law that can be applied should be applied. Addressing the serious human rights abuses and corruption in the North, the top U.S. diplomat pointed out that North Korea has conducted numerous executions and forced people to watch them do so. Kerry also said he had very serious discussions on North Korea's nuclear weapons program with Chinese officials during his recent trip to Beijing, and added the two countries will continue to press Pyongyang to take action. Kerry's comments come after a UN-mandated inquiry last week described systematic, widespread, and grave human rights violations taking place in North Korea. The inquiry will present its findings to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva next month and call on the UN to refer the situation in the North to the International Criminal Court. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News.
37 Chinese who were forced into intense labor by Japan during World War II filed a class action lawsuit against Japanese corporations on Wednesday. This is the first time such a case has been taken to court in China. The plaintiffs are demanding the Japanese firms publish an official apology in 17 Japanese dailies and pay around $160,000 per person in compensation. Although he declined to go into details, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga, in response, said the Japanese government believes a previously signed joint declaration between China and Japan waives the right to make similar claims. Former Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan has slammed the Shinzo Abe administration's plan to bring nuclear power back to Japan, accusing the government of showing no signs of self-reflection over the Fukushima disaster. Kan, as then Prime Minister, effectively shut down the Hamaoka nuclear plant and had called for a nuclear-free Japan following the incident in 2011. Kyodo News reported Kan told a parliamentary committee on Wednesday that there were concerns Tokyo could become inhabitable when the nuclear disaster occurred. Abe's new basic energy plan, unveiled this week, will push to bring Japan's 48 commercial reactors online if they pass safety tests, and could even see the construction of new reactors. Now, the rising trend at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona appears to be waterproof gadgets. Sony blazed the trail last year by introducing the industry's very first waterproof smartphone, and followed up this year's conference by introducing new smartphone and tablet models, both of which are waterproof. But Sony was hardly alone at this year's Congress, with Samsung Electronics, Kyocera and Fujitsu all unveiling waterproof smartphones. Another Korean tech giant, LG Electronics, was named the most innovative device manufacturer this year, thanks to 8 new smartphone models that come with new things like rear buttons and curved screens. To strengthen regulations on protecting personal information following the recent data leak by credit card companies here in Korea, a new privacy protection bill is moving through the National Assembly. The bill, passed Wednesday by the Security and Public Administration Standing Committee, would require financial institutions and other public companies to use encrypted passwords to protect resident registration numbers. The bill will now be sent to the Judiciary Committee and then to the full Assembly for a final vote. This comes after police in the city of Incheon arrested 9 people on Wednesday on charges of hacking more than 200 websites and selling the personal data of 1.7 million people. Now, Southern California is home to the largest community of Koreans outside of Korea. One of the best-known Korean Americans in the state is best-selling author and artist Helly Lee. Hwang Jie, reporting from Los Angeles, had the chance to meet with her. Jie.
Yes, Mark, I did have a chance to sit down with Helly, and we had a nice chat about her experiences. A mother of 4-year-old twins, she bursts with pride about her bicultural heritage. Born in Seoul, Helly Lee was only 4 years old when her family moved to Montreal, Canada in 1968. After a year, the family settled in Los Angeles, and since then, her journey in search of her roots started. Helly's bestseller, Still Life with Rice and In the Absence of Sun, are also about her family's experience in Korea from the 1930s under Japan's colonial rule through the Korean War and until the late 1990s.
English was never something that I grasped or felt I had a talent towards. But it is ironically the thing that I became as an adult, and it is because of stories of my family.
Helly says a sense of identity, knowing where she comes from as a Korean, made her what she is today and will be tomorrow.
And if you don't understand who you are, you can't be present. And if you can't be present, there is no way you can envision a future. And I want to envision a future for myself. I want to envision a future for my twins. I want to envision a future for my community. And so it is crucial that we understand the metal of our back.
On that note, you lived as a man for more than 6 months. Tell me about your experience as a man, and why did you do that?
I thought men had it better, boys had it better. And when I had the opportunity, I decided to experience that and to prove that what I was thinking was true.
It wasn't true.
No, the moment I did the transformation, I lived as a man for about 6.5 months. For the first month, it was very fun. You know, like every new experience, it was very fun. Everything seemed new, everything tasted new, looked new. But once I actually became absorbed in my male character, I realized that it is not always better on the other side of the fence.
As a male, Heli learned there is an image of masculinity that men always have to carry with them, and there are certain limitations that are not acknowledged by society. Drawing on her experiences, Heli performed a one-woman show in Hollywood that was so successful that it ran for 6 months instead of the 4-week run she had originally planned. Heli hopes to contribute to the society by sharing her experiences. She says she wants to be a humanitarian, a good wife, a good daughter, and a mother, and make the world and at least her community a better place. Mark?
Well, thank you very much, Jie. That was Hwang Jie reporting from Los Angeles on the life and experiences of best-selling Korean-American author Heli Lee. Now, yesterday was the last Wednesday of the month, which meant it was Culture Day here in Korea. From free admissions to museums to discount tickets, there's guaranteed to be something for everyone to enjoy. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports.
At Seoul Arts Center on Wednesday, Korea's representative performing arts venue. Hundreds of people gathered for a free concert as part of the government-led monthly Culture Day.
The concert tickets were distributed for free online, and in just 3 hours, all 440 tickets were booked. It really reflects a great level of interest towards the program. We once again realized there is a high demand for culture from all walks of life. So we will keep coming up with good programs to meet the demand.
I came here because my sister got tickets. It is awesome that we can listen to classical music on a regular basis with commentary that makes classical music easier to understand. It was also great to meet these very talented musicians.
It is just one of many cultural performances or exhibitions provided for free or at a discount on this Culture Day across the country, the second ever. President Park Geun-hye was among those taking part. She watched an original Korean musical in support of the government initiative. The first Culture Day in January was considered a success, and even more cultural institutions have joined in on the government initiative this month.
Last month, 883 cultural institutions participated in the Culture Day initiative. This month, more than 200 other institutions notified us about their intention to join in the Culture Day. That means more than 8,000 institutions are participating and providing more cultural benefits for the people.
Discounts on movie tickets are also being offered at 3 major movie chains, CGV, Lotte, and Megabox on Wednesday evening, while major entertainment companies like CJ E&M and PMC Production are providing discounts of up to 50% to its musicals. From this month on, tickets to sporting events will also be marked down on Culture Days. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Hello everyone, I'm Kwon So-wa with the latest news from around the world. Let's begin in Ukraine, where the interim leadership on Wednesday selected the individuals it wants to form a new cabinet. The Maidan Council, a group of protesters and activists, announced their lineup in Kiev's Independence Square as the crowd shouted out their approval or disapproval of each name. Arseny Yatsenyuk, a former finance as well as economy minister, was suggested as prime minister. The full list will be presented to Parliament on Thursday for official approval. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered surprise military exercises near the Ukraine border, which are said to be nothing unusual, but the timing raises suspicion of possible military intervention in Ukraine. The U.S. says any military intervention would be a grave mistake. Syrian troops have killed at least 175 rebels in an ambush, according to Syrian state media. State news agency Sana reported Wednesday that the attack occurred at dawn south of the capital Damascus in the opposition-held area of eastern Ghouta.
Most of the rebels were said to belong to one of the best organized al-Qaeda-linked groups and were mostly foreigners from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Chechnya. The British-based activist group Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported the assault too, but said 70 rebels were killed. An Egyptian court has sentenced 26 people to death for forming a terrorist group and plotting attacks on ships passing through the Suez Canal. Judges at the Cairo Criminal Court said the men were also accused of manufacturing missiles and explosives. All but one of the 26 defendants were tried in absentia. The sentencing comes a day after new Prime Minister Ibrahim Malab vowed to, quote, crush terrorism in all corners of the country. The head of Mt. Gox, once the world's largest exchange for the virtual currency Bitcoin, has confirmed an earlier report that the company was the victim of a massive theft. Nearly 750,000 Bitcoins, worth some $350 million are said to have been stolen. Chief Executive Mark Karpeles said in a statement on Mt. Gox's website that he's in Japan working with authorities to find a solution to the recent occurrences. Mt. Gox abruptly halted all of its transactions Tuesday, raising concerns among users and prompting questions about the future of Bitcoin itself.
Well, the 2014 Sochi Winter Games are well over with, but it's still a topic of interest for many sports fans as a recent survey by Korea Gallup asked 606 people who they thought was most impressive in Sochi. The answer? No surprise here, Kim Yeon-ah. With the survey being conducted via text message, each person was asked to pick 2 athletes they were most impressed with. And at 55%, the figure queen came in first, with 88% of the people also stating that they felt the score was unfair. Meanwhile, Lee Sang-hwa, who won her second straight Olympic gold, came in close second with 52% of the votes, with short track stars Shim Seok-ki and Park Seung-hee coming in third and fourth, respectively. Now, many would agree that An Hyun-soo, or Victor An of Russia, was one of the most impressive athletes in Sochi, and thanks to his success during the Winter Games, one Russian media source stated that he started a new revolution in Russian sports. Well, according to 24smi.org, with An winning Russia's first ever medals in the short track events, he started a huge boom in Russia, as many young kids are now getting into short track. Of course, similar to how Kim Yeon-ah brought figure skating to Korea, many kids now hope to be like Victor An when it comes to short track. And now shifting gears to the AFC Champions League results, we had 2 K-League Classic teams play last night as Ulsan Hyundai Tigers dominated Western Sydney 3-1, with Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors beating Yokohama F. Marinos 3-0 thanks to 2 goals from Lee Seung-gi. And with that, over to Wednesday night's KBL action, where the Changwon LG Sakers beat the Wonju Dongbu Promi in a close game 74-73. Meanwhile, with the Seoul SK Knights taking on Jeonju KCC Aegis, let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, SK all over the paint dominates the KCC defense, outscoring them 25-15 before going into halftime with a 38-20 lead. KCC tries to rally back in the second half of the game, but with Aaron Haynes putting up 22 points and 14 boards, the SK Knights cruise through in this game 71-54. And let's finish things off in V-League, where the Korea Expressway beat Daejeon KGC in a 5-set match, 3-2. Meanwhile, with the Samsung Hwaja Blue Fangs taking on LIG, let's take a look at the highlights. And of course, jumping right into the action here, LIG going for the upset here, but Thomas Egger is the only source of offense for LIG as he puts up 24 points. Meanwhile, with Leo Martinez putting up a game-high 30 points and Park Cha-ru adding 10 points in the game, the Blue Fangs take this game with ease, 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, very happy to see spring is on the way, and that's all for now. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back at noon Korea time. But in the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.